Hello and welcome to another week's edition of Labrats. So over the past several weeks we've been doing a lot of experiments with chemistry. So we've started out with understanding what matter is and then understanding different states of matter and suspension states like we did last week, where we learned that sometimes matter is kind of, exists in between things that we can't really classify or really put our finger on. So this week I'm going to take it a little bit further and we're going to talk about chemical reactions. So chemical reactions is when you mix two substances together, whatever they may be, and they react together. So whatever it is about them causes them to react, and they actually create something entirely new. So obviously when you think about it, we kind of have to have chemical reactions to make literally everything that we see and experience in our universe, because if it wasn't for those chemical reactions, we wouldn't end up with different substances. Everything would just remain pure, like pure oxygen, pure gold, pure sodium, whatever else. So this week we're going to actually conduct an experiment to test whether or not a chemical reaction takes place. So there are a number of cues, I guess we could say, that will indicate to us that a chemical reaction has taken place. One, if you mix two substances together and they change color, that means that a chemical reaction has taken place. If you mix them together and you get gas bubbles, that indicates that a chemical reaction has taken place, because that substance is combining to make something new and kicking off something that creates a gas, and you'll notice gas bubbles that are escaping from your solution or whatever it is that you're mixing together. A precipitate. So a precipitate is when you get something solid falling out of whatever substance you're making. So you'll get little chunks of solid bits in whatever substances that you're mixing together. And the last one is that you might have a temperature change, and you might think intuitively, oh, things might get hotter. Well, things can also get colder. So they can either give off heat or they can absorb heat where they actually become colder. So this week I gave you some vinegar. So I have 2 cups right here that have vinegar in them. And we're going to conduct an experiment to see if we can produce a chemical reaction from one of these solutions. So I told you to freeze some ice to create some ice cubes, which we now know is just a crystalline form of water. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this experiment first. So I'm going to add this ice cube to this glass of vinegar, and we're going to see if we get a chemical reaction. So in science, oftentimes what we do is we come up with we call it like the zero hypothesis or the zero experiment, which means that we kind of know what's going to happen when we do this experiment because we want to compare it to the thing that we're actually curious about. So adding an ice cube to vinegar is our zero experiment, because we're kind of assuming probably nothing's going to happen, and that's exactly what we get. Nothing's happening, right? We're not getting a color change. We're not getting a change in temperature. It's not becoming hotter or colder, except for maybe, the fact that this ice cube is melting and giving off some cold to the vinegar, but that's not enough to create a chemical reaction. We're not getting a precipitate forming in here, so we're not getting solid chunks that are magically appearing in this. And so no color change, no temperature change, no precipitate, and we're not getting gas bubbles, right? So those things are not happening. So I sent you home with a solution, and it was kind of this, bluish, kind of tealy color. And it's basically a mixture of sodium bicarbonate and cabbage juice, because cabbage juice is in fact, it can chemically react with different things. So red cabbage juice. So I created this solution for you. Don't mind my cat. And I asked you to freeze it. So right here I have some frozen solution, which is in the shape of Daleks from Doctor Who. If you don't know what that is, then you ought to watch it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this Dalek ice cube into this solution, and we're going to see what happens. So we can observe that it's kind of this, bluish color. What happens when we add it to vinegar? Interesting. So we're getting a color change. We can clearly see that. It's turning red, right? And we're also getting gas bubbles forming. This is that gas bubble formation. So we clearly have a chemical reaction taking place. So this basically also proves to us we don't just need one thing. We don't just need, the color changes, or we get gas bubbles, or that we get a precipitate forming, or that we have a temperature change. We can have a combination of any of these things that kind of proves to us that we have a chemical reaction taking place. So I sent you home with everything that you need to do this experiment. Hopefully you have fun doing it. If you guys want the recipe to create this solution, to do this experiment over and over and over again, just leave some comments in this video and I can share that with you. And until next week, I hope you have fun with this experiment. So take care.